In Corporita Bonanza with Hanan Awaad, we will talk about several topics and we will meet successful people and experts in many fields to learn about their success stories and learn from them how to empower ourselves and stimulate our creativity. We will also review important books that enriched our lives. This program is for you, whether you are an employee or searching for your next big opportunity, or managing a business, or a student, or a parent. I'm Hanan Awaad. The world is my canvas and success is my paint. Connect with me and my guests at president@corporita.ca. In Corporita Bonanza, we will learn from each other and we will grow together. Hello everyone, this is Hanan Awaad, Editor-in-Chief of Corporita Magazine and your host for Corporita Bonanza, where we dig for gold nuggets of wisdom and experience. Today, we are tele-interviewing John Sonmez, the creator of thesimpleprogrammer.com. John has experience of more than 15 years in the field of software programming and development. And a few years ago, he started his YouTube channel to share his wisdom with aspiring programmers and software developers. And his life mission is to help everyone conquer fear and laziness. Welcome, John, to Corporita Bonanza.
Hi, Hanan. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here and to answer any questions that I can.
John, your experience is in software programming, which is known as a highly stressful field. So, throughout your experience, did you manage to avoid burnout or reach work-life harmony?
So I'd have to say that I am not a big advocate of life-work harmony or life-work balance. I believe that we should live our lives and that our lives include our work. You know, one of the best ways I can describe this is to say that if you're compartmentalizing your life, if you're doing it such that your life is one thing and your work is one thing, then you're not spending a lot of time living your life, right? Because you're sleeping during the day, or hopefully not sleeping during the day. That's probably a pretty boring job. But you're sleeping at night, 7, 8 hours. You're going to your job commuting 7 or 8 hours, right? So that's like 16 hours right there. And so what does that leave you? That leaves you with maybe 6 hours in a day to eat and then to live your life. And then you've got weekends. So I try not to compartmentalize my life. I try to think of my whole life as together. As I'm an entrepreneur, as a software developer, I didn't always follow this perfectly, but I think of it as life. And I think that's the healthy way to look at things. And so that means that I'm not waiting to live my life. My life is currently what it is. And what that doesn't mean is that I constantly work all the time or that I'm constantly not working, right? I mean, even today I've got some schedules and I've got, focused tasks that I'm working on that I want to get done and have some relaxed time. So I do find balance in that way. But I incorporate it all as one thing. This is all part of my life, right? If I don't like doing this, I shouldn't be doing it, right? I live my life. So the other part I would say about this is as far as burnout and whatnot is I think of life as in terms of seasons, right? And so there are going to be times in life where you've got to push hard, and sometimes it's going to be painful, and sometimes it's going to feel like you're, quote, burnt out. But there's some value, I've always taught people, in pushing through the pain and pushing through these barriers, right? I'm not saying that you work yourself into a mental wreck or a nervous breakdown, but what I am saying is that, if you want to become an Olympic athlete, for example, you're going to go through pain. You're going to go through places in times where you feel burnt out, where you feel like you don't want to swim another lap in a pool or throw another javelin or run another race, right? Or train for another 8 hours or however many hours they train a day, right? That's what's going to happen. If you want to become a good guitarist, right? You're going to have to play the guitar when your fingers are sore, when it's got calluses on it, when you don't feel like practicing anymore, when you feel like you just don't want to ever see a guitar anymore. But that's what is required, right? The same thing applies to software development or any area of our life where we want to achieve greatness. We have to be willing to push through the pain, the the boredom, through what a lot of people would define as burnout, and that's where real success lies. It's usually on the other side of that, and usually people fall short. You know, I ran a marathon a few weeks ago, I guess about a month ago, and there's a lot of people at the starting line, but there wasn't very many people around mile 23 when we were going up a hill on that near the last mile of the marathon. A lot of people dropped out or started walking or gave up, right? And so the thing is to remember is that when the going gets tough, it's the people that keep on pushing, that are able to push through even when they don't feel like it anymore, that get the reward. Those are the ones that get the medal. Those are the ones that win the race. Those are the ones that are ultimately successful. So while, yes, software development can be stressful, while life can be stressful and work can be stressful, and there's different times for play, there's times for working hard. You got to know those times, and you really can't separate your life out into these compartments. You know, I could talk about this subject for a while because it's so important, but I'll leave it there with what I said about that.
We live the era of the power of startups and the knowledge economy. We have big players, but at the same time, the incubators around the world attract thousands of aspiring entrepreneurs. So, from your experience, how do you see the world evolving, especially when we talk about knowledge economy in the coming 10 to 15 years?
This is a tough one. This is really interesting. You know, in 10 to 15 years, we live in the era of startups now, and it's really hard to say. I think that what will happen is that more and more of the value will go to people who can run the full gamut, who can assemble their teams, right? I mean, even we're seeing this now with Kickstarters and entrepreneurs, and not the big startup entrepreneurs anymore. No longer the Facebooks and the Twitters and all of this getting a bunch of funding, but now, you know, anyone can really build a business, and a sustainable business from scratch without funding. We've got all the tools. We've got so many things available for entrepreneurs today to build teams and to build products, right? I mean, it's amazing the kind of stuff. Even physical products can be manufactured by outsourcing most of that work. The gig economy is something that is major. And so I think what we're going to see is more of a division of labor. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see more of the gig economy increasing, right? So that you're not going to have a job, right? You're either going to be one of two things. This is how I see the world, and it's not maybe the most beautiful viewpoint for some people, but this is what I see. Again, 10 to 15 years, who knows what could happen, but I see the world being divided, at least in the United States, where I'm at. It makes a lot of sense to see that we're going to have a lot of gigs, and we're going to have a lot of entrepreneurs, and you're going to fall into one of those, right? Right now we have business owner and we have employee, right? That's really the division here. And the owners, they make the money. They take the risk, but they make the money. They're the entrepreneurs, right? And the employees, they get a steady paycheck. They have more stability. But I see both of those roles changing more so. I see less employees, less stability there, more of the gig, like working for multiple employers, just like Uber drivers, or, you know, some of the task stuff that we've got, and all these kind of, you know, gig things that we have, Fiverr and Upwork and all this stuff. And I see entrepreneurs who are really like building these businesses without real teams, right? They have these virtual teams where they have these pieces, they get the services they want. They don't necessarily have these long-term employees. So looking at the future, I think you got to kind of figure out where do you want to play into that. I mean, hopefully you want to be the kind of person that's able to put together the resources and build something. That's the entrepreneur versus just a gig person. And maybe you're doing some gigs on the side as well for your specialty, right? I think there's a lot of flexibility in this, but I just don't see this traditional model. I mean, the traditional model of employment is already falling apart, and I don't see it continuing. Honestly, I see it only getting worse.
From your knowledge and experience, what is the best move aspiring programmers and software developers can take today to advance their careers?
So by far the best move that you should take today is to learn some skills on how to market yourself and build a brand, right? If I talked about how the economy is going to change and how I think this gig economy entrepreneur economy is where we're going, then that means that either you want to develop your skill, either way you want to develop your ability to market yourself and build a brand, right? Because either you're going to be the entrepreneur building that company and using a gig service, or you're going to be more of the gig service, right? As software development becomes more commoditized and you're going to have to compete with a lot of people, especially this global marketplace, you need to be able to have a way to define yourself that's distinct and to market yourself to be able to be the person that someone hires for the gig for your particular specialty. So I would say specialize and learn how to market yourself, develop the people skills, develop those kind of skills that cannot be commoditized, right? Because even though the hourly wage for programming is going down and down, right, as that's being commoditized, the personal skills, the communication skills, the things that are really, really important, those are still going to demand top dollar. In fact, those are going to be the things that are going to demand the highest amount. Those are going to go up in value as we've already seen, as you're going to have this. I mean, the world is converging on this 90-10, you know, we said 80-20 before, way back when Pareto's principle, where we had 20% of the people making, you know, 80% of the wealth, or however you can divide that however you want. But the same thing with like real estate agents or movie stars, right? And I think that we're going to have more rock star, movie star developers and software developers who are the ones who know how to market themselves, who know how to create a personal brand, and they're going to make 80% of the cash. They're only going to make more and more money. And if you don't have those skills, you're going to make less and less money. It's going to be harder and harder to compete. So I would say that that's really the important thing at this point. Is it's not so much learning the technical skills. That is important, but if you're a software developer, if you're a programmer already, right, what you got to really focus on is how can you fit into this economy? How can you provide value more than just writing lines of code? Because writing lines of code, it's already becoming commoditized, and it will continue to be further.
For businesses and business people out there, what are the best apps they can use to manage their businesses and build a strong brand?
So this one's kind of tough. There's so many apps out there. I don't know if there's particular ones that I would recommend as far as building a brand and managing business processes. I mean, definitely apps like Trello and similar apps that allow you to use a Kanban board and to move cards around are good for business, for managing the business. I happen to use one called Kanban Flow, which is a very similar concept. There's so many pieces there. I would say that most people, most businesses should have an email list. I use a tool called Drip to do that. And I'm trying to think what you know, as far as managing your brand, I think YouTube is great. I think, you know, the social media networks are tricky. So I can't really, you know, recommend those like as a strategy. I think producing good stuff and producing value for people is always the best strategy. And however you get that out there, that's not as important, right? You know, YouTube has been very successful for me for doing that. I've used other social media in the past, but the key is there's no super secret tech that's going to make things good. What's going to make things good is having good business processes and having a good marketing and branding, right? The tools will help you to do that. And if you have those things in place, you have good business processes and you have good marketing and branding in place and a good strategy for that, then you'll find the tools. I could tell you tools all day, but that's not the thing. Those are plentiful. You can find those. That's not the hard part. The hard part is executing correctly, is having the good strategy for both of those aspects.
One of the core messages that you always talk about is trust the process. So what does it mean, and how we can reach this success?
So trusting the process is a real simple concept. It basically means this. It means that what you need to do is to divorce the results from the process that gets you to the results and focus on and trust the process. Too many times we're too focused on the results. Too many times we're too focused on changing things that we can't control. And ultimately in life, we can't control results. We can only indirectly influence results. So let me say that again. We can only indirectly influence results. If you do a good job and you do the right things, hopefully you'll get good results, but not always, right? I used to do a lot of poker playing, and I've done some trading, some complex options trading in the stock market, and both of those things taught me this trusted process, and I'll tell you why. It's because of this. It's because you can do the right thing. You can play your hand perfectly perfectly in poker. Okay, you can execute the perfect trade and follow the rules exactly as you should within the stock market, within options trading. It's more complicated than just selling one particular stock, but you can execute theoretically what would be the best play or the best thing to do, and you can get burned. You can lose the hand, you can lose the pot, you can get wiped out, you can lose your money, right? But you keep on executing the right thing because you know that in the long run, there's a thing called expected value or expected return, EV. That you're EV positive, meaning that if you continue to do the right thing, if you continue to trust the process, then you're eventually going to get the results, or that's your best chance of getting the results. Life is like that. Work is like that. Everything that you do in life is like that. It's only an illusion that you directly influence the results. Even if you want to lose weight, you can't directly make your body lose weight unless you cut off your arm, I suppose. But what you can do is you can exercise, you can go to the gym, you can control your diet, right? You can do things, right? You can follow a process that will probably lead to the result. Not guaranteed, but has a high probability. So when I say trust the process, what I mean is that in life, in general, what we need to do is we need to figure out what is the right process, ignore the results, ignore the things that we can't control, and just focus on that. Focus on the one thing that we can control, which is figuring out the process and executing it as best as we can. And the results will come for themselves, right? They'll come without us worrying about them. Or they won't come, right? But we only have control over what we can do, and that's what we should focus on.
Listening to your videos, I have noticed that sometimes your advice contradicts the trending advice from self-proclaimed success gurus, like don't focus on your weaknesses, or play up your strengths, or you don't need to work harder to reach success. So how do you formulate your advice, and how such pop advice doesn't work for everyone?
So this is one thing I'll say about that. I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, but I'll say this. A lot of those people mean well, but they forget where they came from, right? So you see this, 40, 50-year-old entrepreneur who says, if I could tell my younger self one thing, I would say, don't work so hard, okay? Or focus on your strengths and not your weaknesses. And they forget something. They forget where they came from. They forget that the hustle, that the grind, that busting, that breaking through and working those 80-hour weeks, that's what got them to where they were. Yes, now, being successful, they can work, 20-hour weeks or 15-hour weeks and not work as hard, right? Work smart instead of hard. Yes, now they don't have to they don't have to work as hard, right? They can focus on their strength and have other people handle their weaknesses. But back then, when they were forging their character, when they're forging their discipline, it required them to find a sharp rock to grind against, right? It required them to sharpen their edge. It required them to work on their weaknesses, to feel the pain of their weaknesses, to push through, to carry on, to work those crazy hours. And, I don't know a single successful person who's really successful in life, at least in a lot of the terms that the world would declare successful. I have a different definition of success, which is your ability to maximize your own potential. But even in that class of success, I don't know anyone who's successful by any of those means who hasn't busted ass, who hasn't spent a large amount of time grinding it out, going through a hard period of time where they didn't feel like working, where they lost their motivation, but they pushed on, they soldiered on, they had grit, they carried on anyway, they worked ridiculous amounts of time, and they worked hard and smart, right? I mean, I think that's required. It's called paying your dues. And I think a lot of these self-proclaimed success gurus, some of them, they just haven't done it before. They've never been there. They're not successful. And then some of them, and most of them, I think they mean well. I don't mean to knock these people. It's just that they forget. They forget where they came from. They forget how hard it was. And they may honestly even believe that they could have skipped that hard part of life because they forgot that that's what took them and made them who they are today. You cannot forge, you cannot forge character, but within a furnace. That's it. I mean, there's no simple way to do this. It's going to get a little hot, all right? But if you want to forge character, that's what it's going to take in order to do that. So all respect to those people that are successful, that have done this, but have forgotten it. And I think it's mostly a simple mistake and just a simple thing that they've overlooked. They don't realize how they got to where they were, or where they are now.
John, you have an amazing little girl, Sophie. Do you think or perhaps aspire that she might have a career in tech? And why we don't see as many women as men in this field?
This is a good question. So I don't know if I would want her to have a career in the tech industry. And not because there's anything wrong with it, but because I feel like she's got more, to some degree, a lot of people enter the tech industry because it's a good way to make money. It's a job that they can do and they're good at. And one of the things that I've always wanted to provide for my children, to generations on, is sort of a base level of income. And what I mean by that is to have, okay, so for example, you can't be an artist, right? Otherwise, you're going to be a starving artist. And even we've had this in society. I don't want to go into a huge diatribe here, but in societies where we've had an increase in the arts and humanities and the things that really are valuable to the world, we've had sort of patrons, and we've had this kind of ability for people to not have to, if they're having to worry about wolves eating them and bears eating them, and they have to till the ground all day, they're not worried about painting beautiful works of art. You see what I'm saying? And so for her, I would prefer to have, not necessarily that she has to go this way, but that she's got the ability to go into the arts, and if that suits her, maybe she'll do acting or song or dance or things like that maybe would not be good profitable careers, but are real true expressions of humanity, or even philosophy or writing or whatever it is, the creative side. Or maybe she'll create videos. I mean, she talks about it all the time, but if she wants to go into tech, it's totally cool too. But it has to be out of, I've tried to create the possibility to open all these doors, to say the world is open to you. It wasn't open to me quite like it is open to you. I mean, it was, but I didn't recognize it, right? I mean, I had to make trade-offs in order to choose this, and no one told me all these paths were open to me. So I'm going to equip you with everything that I can, the education that you need, right, in order to be able to succeed and do whatever you want to do. And then honestly, it's open to you. Like, honestly, like if you want to do these things that maybe not pay well, but it's a passion and you're really devoted to this, then we'll take care of this. We'll make sure that it's possible. And that's one thing I think, in order to advance humanity, we have to be able to reach that level. We have to reach a level of base sustenance where people can do that. And I think that's in societies where we've seen that happen. We've seen, the Italian Renaissance, for example, Renaissance, for example, and other periods of history where this has been the case. As far as why don't we see as many women in this field? It's just because it's not their interest, right? It has nothing to do with, I know this isn't a popular opinion, but it has nothing to do with discrimination and all this. Not to say that there isn't any of that. Of course there is. But why do you not see as many men that are nurses? Why do you not see as many men that are interested in sewing or fashion? There are some, right? And it's fine to be a man who's interested in those things, but you can say, oh, well, society conditioning, makes it this way. It doesn't matter. It's reality. It's what it is. And you know what? Society conditioning is as much of a part of the evolutionary process as the behavior of ants is in a colony, or bees, right? Society and conditioning and the way societies interact is part of the evolutionary process, right? If you believe that. But my point is really this. It's just different. It's fine, right? You know what I mean? Like, I fully support women that go into tech, and I fully am against anyone who would discriminate against them or treat them poorly or do the kind of, somewhat embarrassing behavior that men sometimes do when, that we've seen called out, right? I'm not going to pretend and stick my head down a hole and pretend like that stuff doesn't happen. It does. Okay. But I don't think that's the primary factor. I think it's just a matter of interest, and it's fine. It's fine. Like, we have a problem with society today with recognizing that men and women are different. There's no problem with that. It's totally fine. It's been like that for thousands and thousands of years. It will continue to be like that. The differences are good. Equal does not mean the same. This is something that, like, if I could drill into everyone's head, is that equal does not mean the same. It just means that you have the same value, But it doesn't mean that you are exactly the same. And we don't want everyone to be the same. I mean, the problem with embracing diversity too much is that you lose diversity, right? Like, the diversity is what we celebrate. It's good. It's good that people are different. It's good that we have different viewpoints and whatnot, but we can't force it, right? It has to become natural, and we have to expand our ways of thinking. So, again, I don't want to go on to a political rant here, but I think it's great when women do join the technology field. I think they're just as capable as men, of course, right? I don't have any kind of, but I do think that it is okay, and it is okay for us to tell young women that if you don't want to do this, don't feel pressured into doing. Like, you don't have to like go into a STEM route just to prove yourself. Like, become whatever you want to become. Like I said, become the dancer, become the artist, become the thing. Use your gift, whatever your gift is, and if you want to go into technology, then let's support you 100% and help you do that as well. But let's not try and force, let's not make judgments about society and say how it should be, and then force our young ones to go into those just to prove a political point. That's sad. It's really sad.
On your YouTube channel, you talk a lot about time management and productivity, and you have a very famous approach using the can-pan method to reach high productivity and manage time and manage different projects. So can you please elaborate more on using the can-pan method, and what's your approach to productivity in general terms?
So I've already gone quite long here, so I'm going to wrap this up real quick here by saying that here's what my basic approach is. I basically, at the beginning of my week, it's a real simple approach. I plan out my week. I use what's called the Pomodoro technique in order to break my work into chunks. The Pomodoro technique itself is nothing magical, but what it does for me, besides creating a focus time to work on tasks, is that it breaks things up, and so I could plan things better. So at the beginning of the week, I have this Kanban board, and I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? All the different days of the week there. And what I do is I put my work into there, and I know how much work I can get done, and I think about it ahead of time, how long it's going to take, and I plan that out, and I re-estimate that throughout the week so that I'm constantly working on what I intend to work on and prioritizing things, and I can see it as that work's progressing rather than using something like a to-do list, which is very arbitrary, right? I know how long I can work on something, doing Pomodoros, but a to-do list, I can't control when I hit the end of that task. So there you go. That's it. I could elaborate more on the productivity, but that's the gist of it.
John, thank you so much for being with us in our first tele-interview, and we are looking forward to read more from The Simple Programmer and listening to your amazing videos.
Thank you, and I'm glad to answer questions, and hopefully what I said will help some of your audience and listeners or viewers. And thank you again for having me. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Corporita Bonanza with Hanan Awaad. Catch our next episode on Thursday, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at www.corporita.info to receive our articles to learn everything you need to pave your way to success.